Welcome back to Onwards and Upwards, everybody. I just finished my exchange program in Amsterdam a month ago. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing 10 things that you need to know before you study in Amsterdam. You might be doing a year abroad in Amsterdam, you might be doing a semester abroad in Amsterdam, or you might be doing your entire degree in Amsterdam. And regardless, I'm going to try and make this video apply to all three situations, giving some of the best tips I learned from my time living there. So hopefully I can make your time a little bit better so you can avoid a couple pitfalls, as well as some hidden tips that I think you'll appreciate. So the first thing you need to know is that Amsterdam is not the city for everybody to go to. I think if you really care about getting the highest quality education and you don't really like being extremely social and you don't like partying, I don't think Amsterdam is really the place for you. This is just my personal opinion, but I think lots of people who go to Amsterdam to study don't take their studies the most seriously. They go to classes a lot, they pass. But I think for many people, the thing that makes Amsterdam worthwhile are all the social connections, the friendships, the relationships that you develop living in a close proximity to other people and being in a new culture. I don't think that studying is the most educational and the most valuable part of studying in Amsterdam. So if you want to go there simply to learn and get the best education, and if your main goal is not to be social, make new friends, and go to lots of parties, I wouldn't honestly really recommend going to Amsterdam. So the second thing you need to know is just that bicycles are very important. When you go to Amsterdam, you'll save a lot of money if you get a bicycle, but there's different ways of doing it. A lot of people rent bikes from swap fits, which I wouldn't recommend doing if you're staying a year or longer, because you could probably, for a better value, just buy a used bicycle. If you're staying for 6 months and you like the convenience of knowing that if your bike breaks, they'll fix it, swap fits is something to recommend. But if you're staying for longer than a year, I would definitely recommend buying a bike. I would say that because cycling is such a big part of the culture in Amsterdam, don't buy a really cheap, crappy bike like I did. The bike served me well for a few months, but it didn't ride very well and it had lots of problems, and basically by the end of my exchange, I didn't even want to ride my bike because my legs were hurting a lot. Don't be afraid to invest on a nice bicycle. The third thing that you should know before you move to Amsterdam is that it is only sunny and nice for some parts of the year. If you're doing your entire degree in Amsterdam, it doesn't matter quite as much because you're going to have plenty of opportunities to go and see the sun. But if you're doing a year abroad, and in particular just a semester abroad, this is really important because when I moved to Amsterdam in late August, it was summer, it was beautiful, everybody was swimming in the local lake and going to the beach, and you sort of forget that that doesn't last forever. And when it stops being nice and the weather gets worse and worse, it gets quite bad. And it's very easy to look back and say, oh, I should have done this or I should have done this while it was still warm. Because I only did one semester in Amsterdam, the first 2 months were really nice and it was beautiful. Then it was just downhill from there. The weather was just worse and worse, which is quite a depressing thing. So that's another reason why I would say that if you can, I would recommend doing a full year there and not just 6 months as well. So the fourth thing you need to know about Amsterdam, which you probably already know, is that it is very expensive. If you're not the richest person, there's a few things that you should know before you go there so you can save some money and also be aware of the situation you're going to put yourself in, because it is easy to spend a lot of money in Amsterdam. I would say that although it's very nice in the city center, there's lots of things you should avoid. Bars, pubs, restaurants, clubs. They're great things to do in Amsterdam, but they're very expensive. So I'd save them for special occasions, and also I wouldn't be afraid to go out of Amsterdam to the suburbs, the smaller villages, experience the culture there, which might be a bit cheaper. Alright, so a fifth thing that I think you should know before you go to study in Amsterdam, related to the last point, if you're in a bar in the city center, you could easily spend 6 or 7 euros on a pint, which might make you think that beer in Amsterdam is actually expensive. Although the classic Dutch beers like Amstel and Heineken are very, very good, and I'd recommend drinking them. If you're somebody who likes good beers but is super broke, what you need to know is that in Jumbo and in Aldi, the two of the big supermarkets there, they have 49-cent beer. So the one in Jumbo, not great beer, I mean it works, whereas in Aldi they actually have a very nice 49-cent beer, because drinking cheap beer is one of the joys of life, so I thought you should know about that. And on a related note, something that I'd really recommend is to get a good water bottle, and when you go out into the city, if you're doing a day trip to Rotterdam or if you're going into Amsterdam Central, bring a bag with water and some snacks, because trust me when I say that I think some people probably spent 50 to 100 euros on bottled water just because they didn't have a good bottle or they just couldn't be bothered to bring it. Another thing you should know if you're going to study in Amsterdam is that a big part of the Dutch culture are the museums. Amsterdam is home to some of the best museums in Europe, and what I'd recommend is getting this thing called the museum card. So you pay about 60 euro, then after that you have access to about 90% of the museums in Amsterdam. The card includes some of the most famous museums like the Anne Frank House, the Van Gogh Museum, and the Rijksmuseum, which I definitely recommend going to. If you want to learn more about the Dutch culture, the museum card will pay for itself after about 3 or 4 uses. It's a good investment. So another thing that you should know before going to Amsterdam is about the public transport. And basically, as soon as you go there, you should get this thing called the OP chip card. Basically, it makes all public transportation, including the metros, the trams, as well as the trains, a lot cheaper. If you're somebody who's not getting a bike, that's even more important too. And this applies only to students who are doing their entire degree in Amsterdam. But if you're doing your entire course of study in Amsterdam, you're actually entitled to free public transportation during the busy hours of the week. All right, so the 8th thing that you need to know is that although the student accommodations are very nice, they're filled with international students and especially Europeans who are doing their exchange program called Erasmus. You're going to meet people from all around Europe. It's very cool. But the thing about it is that there's no Dutch students living with you. Lots of people I know in Amsterdam didn't actually meet any Dutch people, didn't get any Dutch connections, and maybe didn't actually get to see much of the Dutch culture and language very much. But even if you're in an international block, one opportunity to do that is during your lectures. Because at most unis in Amsterdam, your lectures are taught to a mix of Dutch and international students, and the courses are taught in English as well. So definitely try and show up to your classes and actually try and be social, because it's one of the few opportunities where you can actually get some Dutch friends, I would say. Alright, so now we're on to the 9th thing you need to know before studying in Amsterdam. And in my opinion, these last two are the most important. The 9th thing you should really know is that there is a student housing crisis in Amsterdam, and it's very difficult to find housing. Some people doing their exchanges in Amsterdam didn't find housing even 2 or 3 months into their exchange, and they had to pay buckets of money to stay at Airbnbs and hotels and hostels, and that is just not what you want to do, and it's almost not worth coming to Amsterdam if that is your case. But on the flip side, Allenstede campus is actually the biggest student residence in Europe, and it's really an amazing place. Very social. As an international student, you can either stay in the Red Tower or the Green Tower. The Red Tower has 7 floors with 12 people per floor, sharing 2 bathrooms, 2 showers, and 1 kitchen. So it's a bit messy and packed, but so many opportunities to meet people and develop very cool relationships. The Green Tower has 13 floors, and it's a little bit less social, I would say, but still an amazing place to live, and you get your private bathroom. Allenstede campus is also quite subsidized by the government, so it's the best place to live that is also cheap as an international student by far. But the thing you need to know is that there's not many spaces in Allenstede campus in either of the towers, so you need to go to the accommodation portal at the moment that it's open and just book it. Because if you don't stay at Allenstede campus, your time in Amsterdam is likely not going to be nearly as fun. That being said, there's lots of different student accommodations like the student hotel. There's actually some very nice places you can stay in Amsterdam outside of Allenstede and have a really nice time, but the thing is they're all a lot more expensive. So if you're a broke student who wants to have a good time in Amsterdam, Allenstede campus is simply the place to be. So quickly, we have an honorable mention here, and that is about the Dutch snacks, because I wasn't personally a big fan of the Dutch cuisines, like the main courses and stuff, really not my thing, but the Dutch snacks blew me away. The stroopwafels are amazing, the waffles, the sweets in general, the wine gums. This may sound silly, but it's one of the things during my exchange that I really appreciated. Alright, so we got to the final point now, and this honestly might be the most important one, up there with the housing. Especially if you're coming from outside of Europe and you're doing 1 or 2 semesters in Amsterdam, something that you need to take advantage of is the traveling, because the budget airlines in Europe like EasyJet and Ryanair really allow you to travel between countries all around Europe for an incredibly cheap price. And another perk about living at Allenstede campus is just how close you are to the airport. You can get there for about €3, takes 30 minutes, then you're off to any country in Europe that you want. Except maybe the Ukraine. It's quite reasonable to expect that you could fly to Italy, Spain, Budapest, Prague, places like this for about 50 to 60 euros return trip if you book in advance. And that's something about doing an exchange in Amsterdam, is that you really don't have the full experience, I would say, unless you went to some different European countries and made some amazing memories with friends as well. Because trust me when I say that it's an amazing opportunity to travel that you might not have any other time in your life. So take advantage of it. During my 1 semester exchange in Amsterdam, I was lucky enough to go to Spain, Hungary, Germany, and Italy. Maybe I'm forgetting one. And I think on a certain level, traveling to those countries is just as meaningful and important as the exchange in Amsterdam itself. So definitely don't waste the opportunity to travel around Europe while you're on exchange. So in general, I should say that Amsterdam is probably not the place you should go if you want to have a high quality education where you're studying every day and you're pursuing your career path relentlessly. I wouldn't really recommend going to Amsterdam. However, I would say that Amsterdam is the right place for you if you're okay with sacrificing some parts of your education and getting the best grades and studying all day in exchange for being extra social, meeting new people, making long-term connections, and even traveling to different countries. If you want to have lots of new experiences and open up your comfort zone a bit, I would definitely recommend studying in Amsterdam. With that being said, I want to say thank you very much for watching this video. Please like it if you enjoyed it. Share it with your friends if you or your friends are planning or thinking about going on an exchange to Amsterdam. If you want to see more videos just like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on Onwards and Upwards. Have a nice day.